Hello, I'm Sam, and I'm in the studio today with Peter Rodriguez, and he's going to be clearing up some of the technical specifications and some of the history behind the famous Herchild, or the Fairchild compressors. Our version are the Herchild 670 and the 660. Okay, Peter, could you let us know a little bit what makes the the Fairchild, the original Fairchild, so special?
Hi, Sam. Well, actually, the original Fairchild is a tube design from the mid to late 50s. It was designed and developed by a pretty talented electrical engineer called Rain Norma. And he made the first 670s for Les Paul. I think they were actually 660s, like mono units, but that was before Rain actually joined Fairchild Corporation. It was a big company with many businesses, but they had like a pretty, I would say, shy intro into the recording business. That was just a few years. So it was an outstanding technical achievement of the time because the problem with compression back in the day was that as everything made with tubes, it was very difficult, if not impossible, to obtain fast attacks with the technology at the time. So all the compressors before the Fairchild 660 and 670 were pretty slow on the attack side, which was a major drawback for trying to control the overloads in broadcasting systems and vinyl cutting and all that stuff. So this was the first one that actually had what we call a fast attack, which is pretty much the sound of the 670. That fast attack that we hear when we hear the cymbal washes on Ringo's drums, where you essentially you don't hear like almost any attack of the stick.
Initial
It's just a wash.
yeah.
That kind of sound was impossible to get before that. So
All the peaks would sneak through.
yeah, exactly. So it was that, and the greatness of the 670, as with many of the classic designs, is based on simplicity, where the signal path is as simple as you can get. It's an input transformer, a very special one, a set of varimu tubes in pure Class A push-pull configuration, and an output transformer with absolutely no feedback on the signal. So it's the purest you can get.
Pure, yes.
But it has to be done right. So if you want to do such a pure design, you need to understand what's going on the input transformer, you need to understand what's going on the tubes, and you need to really understand what's going on the output transformer. So
and those transformers really do contribute a lot to the sound, their overall sound and tone.
Oh yeah, these three elements alone were very, very, very difficult and critical when recreating the unit. So the input transformer back in the day, there were so many input transformers. We are talking about the 50s. It was the transformers and tube era.
Yeah,
there were so many off-the-shelf
yeah.
transformers that you could buy. And Ray Narma was not able to get an input transformer that was the proper one for the unit. So he had, because this transformer has to have a very special ratio, just to be able to drive the tubes in the specific way they are working on the 670. So he had to use an output transformer in reverse as an input transformer. And
clever.
this unit is key, absolutely key in the sound of the 670. There's no way a 670 can be termed a 670 without nailing this input transformer.
All right.
So the original unit was an UTC A26 output transformer used in reverse. For these special ratio, for these special characteristics, that I don't want to go deeper than that because it's very tricky to get it, and it's one of our major ingredients for the Herchild. But I personally had to work with Dennis from AMI Transformers to get this unit right, and they did an amazing job with this recreation, which is so hard and so time consuming to make that they even put a serial number on each transformer. So
Wow.
yeah, this is the UT26 made by AMI Transformers, serial number 1510. That comes with a measurements on distortion and characteristics and all that.
Wow.
Pretty close to the
This is an
to
original?
the this is a UTC unit.
Okay.
So this is absolutely key
Yeah.
because it gives you the right level sent to the tubes in order to work properly. So that's on the input transformer. The output transformer, the original output transformer was a triad unit called HS52, which is an all steel transformer that is responsible for, as with all steel transformers, is responsible for the saturation when you push the unit up to high levels. And steel transformers give you this nice low end saturation when pushed, with transformers made out of nickel laminations. They kind of like clip harder and in a more sudden way. So again, these transformers had to be properly recreated. So this is an original Triad HS52, and this is the recreation. We work with Cinemag, CM HS52, all steel silicon laminations. Pretty amazing job from Cinemag as well. So that's on both sides, input and output, and then the varimu tubes. So the original tube used in the Fairchild 670 and 660 is the infamous General Electric 5-star 6386 tube. Those tubes were pretty special. Well, at the time they were not that special in terms of being a boutique tube or anything. They were off-the-shelf tubes. But back in the day, all tubes were off-the-shelf tubes.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So common.
Yeah, they were so common. They were so. My guess is it was originally chosen just because they were reliable. There were so many of those, and
it was convenient.
It was convenient for the unit. The main problem, which was not a problem back in the day because there were so many, but the main problem of this tube is the tube needs to be operated very close or even exceeding the power rate dissipation.
Oh.
So in order to have the proper headroom, distortion, and characteristics and compression down to over 20 dB of compression, the unit has to have a high voltage on the plate. The original had around 240, 250 volts, and we nailed that plate voltage. And at the same time, the plate current needs to be the same one as in the original unit. So with these characteristics, the original General Electric tubes are basically frying. So the
That
life
requires you to change them out frequently then.
Yeah, you had to change them out frequently. The original,
Which, of course, back then, the replacements, it wasn't a big deal.
that wasn't a problem. It was probably a $1 tube back in the day.
Yeah, okay.
So, and they were pretty good, pretty consistent. So matching, if you have a bag of tubes, you just, swap them out. That wasn't a problem. So it's very common for a Fairchild back in the day to have tubes exchanged every like 6 months or so.
Boy.
So there's a lot of technical documentation from EMI engineers especially in the 660, because that was the unit that was used in EMI, but it's the same. It works the same. So they documented all these kind of problems and stuff with the tubes. So a few years ago, the Czech Republic's company JJ Tubes, they kind of like released some kind of substitute for the General Electric tube that they call 6386. We tested the unit. It didn't test well for us.
Using those tubes from JJ.
Yeah, it was not the same as the original GE tubes. We read online and we found out that users trying to use the tube were having issues with matching, with noise and all that stuff. Plus, the tube was really expensive. So it's common ground everywhere. It's been greatly documented in forums from people trying to make their own recreations of the Fairchild, that the 6BA6 tube used as a triode nails the curves, the compression curves of the original GE 6386. So we tried that, and that's what it is. That was it.
But the problem is getting a hold of those, right? They're quite scarce, from what I understand.
Not really. Actually, when we decided to use the tube, we made like a worldwide search for 6BA6s. We bought as many as we could find. We're talking about tens of thousands. I don't know the exact number. We took those. All those were military tubes, so they are very
new old stock.
Yeah, new old stock from surplus military.
Wow.
Yeah, so we got a lot of those from original from NATO in Europe. We got a lot of those from Department of Defense.
Wow. Okay.
In the U.S.
Those are going to be dependable, at least.
Yeah, so they're pretty good tubes, pretty good results.
And you said you've got thousands and thousands of these, then.
We do.
So you basically got enough for a lifetime.
We have enough for a lifetime. Again, eventually, all the tube stuff will disappear. I said in some kind of like reply to another video that, and eventually the Earth will collapse against the sun. But
Okay.
that's another
That's,
scenario.
yeah.
So yeah, we are safe. Customers are safe. And again, one of our motivations when designing products is just listening to customers and try to cover the deficiencies of competitors' products. So we got a lot of feedback from customers telling us, I use these recreation, which is equipped with 6386 tubes, and I've been using these whatever brand for 10 years, and I have to pay $1,500 per year to retube the unit, service the unit, and all that, and I can't do that anymore. So with the 6BA6 tubes, not only we are getting the proper operating point that was used in the original with the same plate voltage, the same current, and all that stuff, in the same sound, but we are making the life of our customers easier.
Right.
Not only the tools will last longer, but retubing will be like a normal service. It's not like, oh, I have to retube my Fairchild recreation. What should I do? Pay the rent or?
Right. I mean, that's a serious investment, 1,500 right there.
Yeah,
And if
that's
you're saying
like
that can be a
yeah, that's the feedback that we get from
ooh, and if
customers.
that's a yearly expense, that adds up, right?
So that's pretty much it.
I also understand if you did acquire a large stock of new old stock tubes, there's a good chance as well that the majority of those tubes are probably from the same batch of production or very similar, or at least you probably have within a year's worth or something. So they're probably more likely to be easier to match as well if they were produced within the same.
They're pretty consistent. We developed, which is pretty common, with not only this product but with several of the other products that we manufacture. It's important for people to know that we are a manufacturing company. So we manufacture these units ourselves in-house. So we are very used to manufacturing and to making custom test equipment, like test jigs, calibration jigs, and all that stuff. So for this unit, we made a tube calibration and testing jig, which actually uses an audio precision system. So we just download all the data to an Excel sheet, and it actually matches the tubes and give us which tubes have to be matched. Because another problem with the JJ tubes is that they give you a little sheet with a few points, and they guarantee you that both units in the same tube are matched within 3 dB.
3 dB.
So 3 dB, to me, 3 dB and matched is two very different,
It's almost contradictory.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
very.
That's a pretty big range.
And that's one of the
tolerance.
things that we read online from people complaining that buying matched sets of tubes from JJ and they were not matched at all, and they were not replying to the to the requirements of that kind of customer.
And the 6BA6s that you're using now, what kind of range do they have? What kind of tolerance?
We are matching them down to 20 dB of compression.
Which is pretty heavy.
The criteria for them to be matched is to have a mismatch of 0.5 dB
Okay.
down to 20.
Wow.
But reality is, if you have the other points are more or less at 0.2 dB, you're getting better than 0.5 dB at 20 dB of compression between left and right, and but that's the criteria.
So would it be safe to assume that if you're only compressing 5 or 10 dBs, that it's even better then?
Yeah,
Wow.
that's
Okay.
that's more or less what it is. So the other problem with the JJ tubes is the data that they send you only goes to a voltage, down to a voltage that is slightly less than 10 dB of compression. So you don't really know what's going on
Right. If you're
below
really,
that.
yeah.
So even if we were using them, which I'll never, you never say never, but I don't think we will use them ever.
Well, there's no reason to as well if you've got all of those
Yeah,
new old
that's
stocks.
that's what I mean. But maybe in another product.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
we should use an equivalent jig to measure them down to 20 dB. So I recently read some comments online from people and actually from some other manufacturers saying, well, they're pretty much, our unit is pretty much matched down to 10 to 15 dB of compression, and down there is not important. You know, below that, who cares?
Well,
It doesn't really matter. To me, that's not, that's pretty untechnical, and that's not what we do. So that's pretty much it. It's very simple topology, but you have to nail those three
Right.
important components. From that on, you have a very important all tube sidechain circuit.
Okay.
That again,
Right, the control
there's
there
no
is-
way you can get the same sound, the same characteristics on the attack. Especially, release is okay, but the attack with a solid state unit, because solid state units are very fast. It's you can with a solid state sidechain, you can go as fast as you want, and then you have to break the circuit to be not that fast.
Oh, okay.
To emulate how the tube sidechain would work. So for me personally, in that expensive recreation is a no-no. So the three ingredients for the signal path: the tube sidechain, a beefy power supply, and getting that high voltage on the plates, getting the right current plate, and all that stuff, we're set.
Sounds good. And I understand that in the Herchilds, there's actually a higher amount of tubes as well, many more tubes, and that helps to kind of distribute the workload between them. Or so in theory, they should also last longer because they're not being taxed as hard.
Yeah, it has to do with what I explained before, because the original 6386 tubes are actually two triodes in the same bottle.
In the same. Okay.
The power that those triodes are able to dissipate is way less because the heat is affecting. It's like it's like having.
Sense.
It's like having two heaters very close to each other. They will become hotter and hotter and hotter. So by using these 6BA6 tubes, which are separate, we need to use double the number of tubes. But those tubes are in a much healthier power dissipation condition, and they will last way longer.
Makes sense.
And there's a common misconception in between users that tubes die, that they have like a very short life expectancy. But if you use the tubes in a healthy operating point, they will last like many years.
Okay.
So there's cool examples with U47s and the VF14 tube. You have units from back to the late 30s maybe using the same tube, no problem, because those tubes are being used under very generous conditions. So I expect our units to last way longer without having the need to retube.
Okay, that's good to know. So when you say way longer, what do you think? A couple of years? Or we really don't know, I guess, at this point, because you don't.
We really don't know.
You haven't had to change out any, really.
We've been
How long has the product been in the market now? It's been out for over a year?
It's June 2022 was the launch. We haven't had a single request for retubing, other than a guy that actually smashed the unit against the desk, and another guy had a problem in shipping, and a tube was broken. We just replaced that, and we haven't heard from anyone complaining about, oh, my tubes are dying, or the unit is not behaving.
I guess time will tell. I guess we'll see.
Time will tell.
But we know at least a year.
Yeah, we have our customers are covered forever with our supply of tubes.
And I heard you'll be offering them at prices, comfortable prices, nothing too intimidating. As you have so many of them.
We're offering a retubing set at cost.
At cost, wow.
Yeah, at least within the first 2 years from buying the unit. Yeah, we are that confident.
That's very reassuring as well.
Yeah.
Okay, that's very good to know. Okay, Peter, and what made you decide that that was something you thought was interesting to bring back?
I think. Well, I personally love challenges. That's something that keeps me alive and yeah. And I think when someone takes the responsibility, which for me is the responsibility to term a unit 670, to term a unit Fairchild-ish, you shouldn't stop just nailing the looks and, just making compromises inside the unit and just saying, okay, it looks like the old one, people will buy it. So for me, I'm not only a designer, I'm a developer, so for me, the challenge is to study the circuits, deeply understand what each value, each component, its little nuance is doing there, and why.
Yeah, what each piece is contributing to the overall sound.
That was very, in this case, it was very, amazing to understand why Rain Norma had to choose an output transformer and reverse it.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
At the input and the impact that those decisions have in the unit. It's not just just taking schematics from over the web and just saying, just do it as cheaply as possible and just release the unit. So for me, is that personal challenge. And
how long did that take you guys to actually achieve that? How much time
it was a 2-year
process?
It was a 2-year process from sourcing the original transformers,
Which was fundamental.
That was fundamental.
Yeah.
Talking to and finding transformer manufacturers from all over the world. Not only the audio transformers, which are important, but the sidechain transformers.
All right.
So actually, we have transformers from 3 different continents in the unit. To obviously nailing the look, which is also important, and understanding every single detail of the circuit and why the designer and the developer choose to do and what was in their heads when doing that, when you try to make it better or more reliable without compromising the original sound and performance. So it's a very complicated process. It's very rewarding at the end. It's really it's a moment of joy.
And you've been getting a lot of really positive feedback as well.
Yeah, we do. It's amazing when sound engineers, not only well-known people, which we do have a lot of customers on the high end with Herchild, but people from all over the world with studios of all kinds saying, "Man, I got this Herchild and it made my day."
Okay, and regarding the famous Heritage Audio slogan, "The sound of yesterday, built for tomorrow," how would you apply that to the Herchilds that you produce?
Well, in the case of the Herchild, actually, we brought very little to the original design, which, again, as I said before, had the simplicity of the design was key. So the only things that we added actually is the DC threshold control, which was actually in the original unit, but it was like an adjustable thing that they consider a calibration point. The DC threshold, it's pretty cool for people not familiar with the original unit. The ratio control, which is now obvious in any compressor,
standard has to be there, right?
Was not that easy to achieve back in the day. So what this DC threshold does is some sort of threshold / ratio control, which I really love because with compression we're used to getting sound below threshold, no compression at all.
Right, and as soon as it passes?
And as soon as it passes the threshold, depending on if you have like a soft knee or hard knee or whatever, but
you do have that
it's just a very kind of like yes or no thing.
Right, it's either hard knee or soft knee.
Yeah, and again, it's threshold, yes or no, and then it compresses or not. But what I like from this unit is if you set the DC threshold down to a very curvy situation, is compressing almost always. Just a tiny amount. If you have a very low signal, it's compressing a tiny amount. If the signal increases, it's compressing more.
Right.
But you have the sound of compression is always there.
Uh-huh.
You can turn it all counterclockwise and get a more limiting kind of effect where you have actually a threshold and then above the threshold the unit limits, below the threshold the unit doesn't do anything. But I really love the curvy clockwise settings where you're hearing compression even at the very, very, very low passage.
Okay.
So it's absolutely opens a very wide spectrum that was in the original. And it was just it was difficult or not handy with a knob. there.
Right, and that's continuously adjustable.
Yeah, it's continuously adjustable.
Okay, so you can really find the sweet spot there.
Yeah, and it works wonders for drums. It makes the toms sing. It makes that, cymbal wash.
And the fact that you've got it right there on the front panel, easy access, invites you to use it.
Yeah.
Much more, instead of having to pull out a screwdriver and make a
absolutely.
calibration.
And if you're mastering, you may want to use it on the limiting settings, or if you have the unit on the mix bus, you may not want to have that sound all the time. But it's really cool to experiment. And the other two things that I believe are actually fundamental on a stereo compressor nowadays, it's stereo link function, which was not in the original. So that was a must to have stereo link. And then the other one, which is not in all recreations, is a sidechain filter. It's a high pass filter. It's easy for the original 670 to overload the sidechain circuit with very low frequencies, and nowadays everybody needs it. You don't want your bass drum or your sub-low content to govern or drive the compression all the time. So that's in the unit. You don't have to pay extra to have a high pass filter in the sidechain, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, it's pretty basic in modern day productions.
And other than that, and a 220 110 switch on the back. So if you're moving from the US to Europe or Europe to the US, you can use the unit again. But other than that, it's all the same thing.
Okay, that's good to know. And why isn't there a bypass on the unit?
Well, the way the 670 works, actually bypass is a cool function when you have a typical compressor where you have a compression section and then you have a gain makeup. So you're able to restore the gain, and you can do an A/B in between, before and after, with matched gain, and then decide, it's sounding over-compressing. But with the 670 circuit, there's no gain makeup. So you have an input gain, you have a threshold, and you have to find the sweet spot in between those controls, which greatly depends on the level going into the unit, which is essentially the level that you have on your track or your mic pre or the source, basically. So there's no way, in this case, for a bypass to be a fair comparison in between in and out, before and after, and it can be misleading actually, because you have to factor in the gain. So you can end up with more gain, less gain, depending on how much compression you want to achieve, because you have, for example, a very low signal going into the unit. No matter how hard you hit the threshold, you may not be compressing as much as you want, and you have to bring the input gain in.
You'll be obliged to. Yeah,
so,
I get it.
And then you will check with the bypass and say, what's going on? The unit is not working properly. I have the unit doesn't have the gain that it should have. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, for me personally, less is more 90% of the time. So that's why, for example, classic compressors and the most famous compressors, or the most famous EQs, or in general the most famous classic gear, Fender Champ, they have very limited controls. There's a designer and a developer behind that giving you the right ones and making the right choices.
I get it. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because otherwise, you don't know what's going on. It's very easy to make a compressor sound bad because of attack and release wrong decisions.
Mm-hmm.
You know that. So LA to A.
Keep it simple,
adjustable attack, no adjustable release. Sounds good all the time. You know, and LA to A made a lot of engineers sound like they know what they were doing because there were a designer and a developer behind the unit. So giving more options, giving more functions is not always good, in my opinion. And, you know, we've been designing and developing a lot of units. It's almost 55 products right now. And it was key in the design process to give the right amount of options. That's what it is.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, Peter. I hope this has been informative for all of you out there. Nonetheless, if you have any other questions or doubts, you can always contact us through our webpage. Thank you.